You guys know I'm a sucker for anything potentially WoW 2 related. Now, is WoW 2 ever going to happen? I don't know if there's actually going to ever be a reset of this magnitude. I wish WoW 2 would happen, personally. I think it would be one of the biggest moments in gaming history if there was ever like an honest reset of WoW and like a complete, basically, something in the story could lead to it, right? It doesn't have to be just like a random, oh, now WoW 2 starting, WoW ended. There definitely could be a storyline. Could be a World Soul Saga storyline that leads to it. Who knows? But let's see what Mr. Marsalian has to say about WoW 2 and how it might just happen.
Did we just get WoW
Can always
2.0
use
just last week?
another
Mikey
death
Moto,
knight.
man, thank you for the sub. 5 months. Oh my god. Oh my god. 5 months of being a Death Knight of our Scourge. Thank you.
Maybe. I think we did. And we've been memeing it for a very long time. And
Man, that looks
WoW
glorious.
2.0 has been kind of like a myth, a legend, a mystery in the ether that might be or might not be. But now we
Yeah.
actually see what it could be with the recent release of WoW Remix, with all of the changes that it added to gearing, player power, leveling, dungeons and raids, and all of the content that are a good indication that not only is WoW
WoW 2 would
2.0
be
a
epic.
possibility, you can actually play it today, maybe minus the graphics. Although to be fair, and to address it, just to take it out of the way, the graphics part has been something that people have played with in a lot of engines over the years. I
Yeah.
mean, we know all the Unreal Engine changes to World of Warcraft, and they kind of look dope, but
We watched this one. And one thing that I liked about it, and I've said before, is like WoW could have an up-res in graphics without necessarily going hyper realistic, because I don't think that's the correct route, right? But this one that we watched, I remember I said it, this still looks like WoW art style, like, you know, that kind of cartoon. It's not really cartoon, it's a very stylized form that WoW has. And it's been nice because it's lasted so long over the years. I think WoW could go more, not completely realistic, but like this, where the backgrounds are slightly more realistic, but you still have these characters that look very much Warcraft style, right? Like this orc, very clearly Warcraft, you could tell.
I don't think that would be the future of WoW 2.0.
This is too real. I don't think WoW would ever go this route personally, but I think like a WoW 2 would very much be an up-res to the game, not necessarily a complete redo in terms of, okay, now we're going hyper realistic.
Either. I think the graphic identity has to remain the same so that the visual representation of WoW is still, I don't really want to say cartoony, but it is kind of cartoony. But
I
it
did
will
not
have
pre-watch this, but I think everybody has this feeling that it's cartoony-ish. That's how it
to be
is.
there. I don't think Unreal Engine is the future. And we're not here to talk about graphics, although we do have a video on that you can check at the end of this one. But I am talking about how the game actually plays, how the systems interact with your character, and how, weirdly enough, friendly it is for new players that are trying to get into WoW, but the modern WoW just doesn't give them the tools to actually do it.
Yeah.
So let's kick it off right now with the...
If they ever did a WoW 2, 100%, they would have to keep that combat. You know, one thing that WoW has had over every single MMO ever is the combat fluidity. Like when you swing an axe, it feels good. For some reason, when it hits something, it feels good. I've seen a lot of hyper-realistic MMOs come out, and I've seen, you know, I've watched things like Ashes of Creation and shit like that, where for some reason, when they're, the way they interact with the environment or the way when they swing a sword and it hits something looks, it's just jank. There's something about it that feels off. Whereas WoW, for some reason, has mastered that. Like, it is the best by far at swinging an axe and hitting something, and it feels like you're hitting something.
gearing system. The gearing system is fairly simple and still customizable and deep enough where it offers the satisfaction of playing an RPG. One thing that's really obvious off the bat is that if you loot an item at level 10, since that's when you start your journey in the remix, you can essentially upgrade it all the way to max level. We already have the upgrade system in the live game, and it is a system that has helped improve gearing altogether within Mythic Plus, raids, and essentially endgame entirely, but it also added a lot of convoluted aspects to it that we kind of got used to it because we've been playing a lot of WoW, but any player that hasn't played Dragonflight at all, or at least the last couple of seasons, or even new players, will not be able to wrap their heads around explorer, adventurer, veteran, champion, hero.
Jesus Christ, the naming system. You guys know I can't stand the naming system. And the 400 currencies. All that shit would have to be gone. Bronze and Remix, I haven't played a lot of Remix, King Julian, you're asking. I haven't played a lot of it, but I will say the bronze system in it is great. Having bronze be able to be used for upgrade and everything is good. Now, is it harder to police because it's so you can use it for almost anything? It is, and I don't think they'll ever create a currency that can be used for everything in retail. But damn it, I mean, create some currency protection, because there's way too much going on right now. And yes, the upgrade system is absolutely great. It's been a big W for the game, and I think it'd be a good thing going forward for sure.
Awakened track items with flight stones, whelp stones, drake stones, worm stones, aspect stones, and how you get all of these from different type of contents. We already did this video. I'm not going to talk about it again, but suffice to say that even though the overarching design of the gearing system solves the gearing issue, it does so in a very complicated way that puts a barrier of entry for a lot of players, not only new players going into the game, but even players that don't really want to have to open up a guide every time they want to think of where to find the items that they need to find, and are they able to actually upgrade them. WoW Remix just does it simple. You just have one currency, which that's great in of itself, and we will talk about that as well, and just fully upgrade that item all the way to max item.
Yeah, you don't get why it's complicated. It's not really complicated, Eodin, if you take, you know, some time to figure it out, to understand what the naming structure is and everything. But this system is just far more superior. The bronze system's better. Just have one currency, and the amount you need to upgrade is increased, right, exponentially. You need more and more and more to get it. Whereas the new currency, where you got to convert, you know, you can convert 90 crests down to 15 crests to go up to 15 crests, and then you got those crests, and now you can create 90 more of those crests to go up to another level of the 15 other crests. So you got to have this crest upgrading and downgrading system, and then plus you got like flight stones on top of that you combine with your crest to upgrade shit. And the whole myth track has nothing to do with the naming of the crests. Like, it's not myth crests. They're aspect crests and worm crests and shit. If you don't understand how dragons work, then you don't know what the fuck a worm is versus an aspect. It's the naming system is fucked, and the system itself is kind of fucked. It's just complicated for no reason. Just make it more. Just make one currency that you require more of to upgrade further. That's it.
Level, completely removing the need to actually loot that item multiple times, do different styles of contests to get different versions of that item.
That's a good way to put it, Konisi. It's too busy. That's it. Maybe you don't want to call it complicated, but it's busy. It's just a lot of extra shit for no reason.
And there are a lot of people that have used also this counter argument to simplifying the gearing upgrade system, is that people don't want non-mythic raiders to get mythic level gear, and you can translate that into dungeons as well. But that's not an actual problem that people actually have a good argument for, because you can just block item levels from being accessible as an upgrade choice based off of if you've cleared the respective difficult content to unlock those upgrade choices, which Remix also does. You cannot actually at level 10 get the max high level gear. You have to level through it. Now, the actual character level being a barrier is something that works for WoW Remix, but we can translate this into modern WoW, where killing 3 bosses of a mythic raid should be able to let you upgrade gear to myth track and higher. Although I want to develop this a little bit more throughout the video, I do want to say that the currency is so much better to only.
I do like that you don't need to upgrade. You don't need to have done mythic raiding to upgrade through mythic levels, right? You can use mythic plus kind of to go through mythic, and they should keep it that way, because mythic raiding is very much locked behind a bunch of arbitrary bullshit, and its difficulty level requires you basically to be in a guild who's hardcore and decides to, you know, really progress through that shit. Whereas mythic plus, really, it's just kind of on the player's skill. You got 5 people, you put a group together, you do it. Right, you got to do it more than you would have to do if you were doing mythic raiding to upgrade your gear, but it's still an alternate route to upgrade gear through a myth track, which is good, and I appreciate that.
Have one of, which is bronze, that not only is it used to upgrade your gear, to purchase gems and everything else that goes into the gearing system, which I'll mention in a second, but also is rewarded from scrapping your items, which is something that we've had in BFA, scrapping items that just gave you profession crafting materials. It doesn't have to give you bronze, but it has to give you useful currency that you can use to further upgrade or get your character more power in terms of the gear that it has. Bronze just is the WoW Remix currency, but it can be translated into flight stones. Let me scrap current level gear into flight stones, or, you know, use it to buy cosmetics and mounts, which is something that definitely a large part of the player base is aiming to get whenever there's a new event. Look at how many people hated with a passion Plunderstorm to bits and still played it because they wanted the transmog.
That's true. That's true. I mean, you want to, Blizzard, you want to bait people into playing this game all the time. Just put some good transmog and mounts in the game, and people will play it no matter what.
much people care about cosmetics, and the devs definitely know that, which is why that's the biggest appeal of WoW Remix. Vendors upon vendors upon vendors upon cosmetics and mounts galore.
Yeah.
And with the gearing system, we also have the gems that you might have seen and played with already yourself that lets you customize your player power, whether it is through stats, through procs, or special abilities and powers. It just adds a level of gameplay that is very similar and reminiscent of games like Path of Exile, Last Epoch, essentially ARPGs that make actually getting gear, upgrading gear, and using gear so much fun that it's the driving force of those specific games. And implementing those in WoW is not only smart, but the future, and the future is here. On top of this, a lot of the good things that WoW 2.0 or Remix, how everybody else is calling it, does really well is actually include elements of why people love the classic version of WoW, why people play a lot of either Seasons of Discovery, they play Cataclysm now, but also past expansions as well, particularly Vanilla WoW, which is still to this day the most popular classic version of WoW, and that's reflected in the WoW Remix with the fact that through a bunch of aspects. But
I actually heard like Wrath Remix was, I think it was the second most popular for a long time, has really fallen off. I'm not part of that, you know, Wrath Remix, Wrath the Classic. I'm not part of the classic community at all. I don't play the classic versions of the game. I played it back when it was retail. But it's really taken a nosedive, I guess, with some of the stuff Blizzard's done with it.
One important one is that rare items feel like rare items.
The only
epic items feel like epic items. When you reach max level, you just get epic items across the board. And when all items are epics, no items are epics. We already know that by now.
True.
They cannot go away from it because that's just ingrained into the game system so much that it's just not possible, but it would be possible with WoW 2.0, and that is what's happening right now with WoW Remix. So let's actually talk.
And also, when everything's legendary, nothing's legendary, right? We kind of heard that in Legion. Right? Legion was like power cap, I feel like, in game. It was the most powerful we ever became. And yeah, when everyone was getting the legendary plus, you know, you got the two legendary items plus your weapon, it was extreme. And legendaries became less legendary, of course.
Talk about the player power and how it affects endgame. First of all, let's talk about the gems and the stats. Like I mentioned before, right now the gear that you loot in WoW Remix is basically uncommon, rare, or epic. Epic is super, super, super rare, ironically, and some of the epic items are only rewarded through achievements like the trinkets and rings. I'm not saying that that's what we need in WoW 2.0, but what I'm saying is that when you get an epic, you feel epic, and that hasn't been the case for modern WoW.
True.
And now each type of item unlocks certain stats. For instance, a green item just gives you stamina and a random secondary or tertiary stat because they mixed up Mastery Haste Crit with also Leech Avoidance and Speed.
I'll be honest, do stats even fucking matter? I mean, everyone just looks at item level. Does anybody still care about the stats? Yes, in the end game, maybe, when it comes to socketing your shit and, you know, what's it called, enchanting correctly and everything else, but like, realistically, are people going to hold out on stats for an item upgrade that's 5+ higher? I don't think so. I feel like stats have become really like not even secondary. They're like tertiary, whatever, to whatever you're doing in the game. I feel like Blizzard needs to either make stats better or just kind of have them go away for the most part. Really just be like a socketable thing.
And so on, which is fine. We don't have to have that distinction in real WoW, but the fact that once you get a rare item, it also adds main stat on top of it, gives that extra feeling of, oh, this is a way better item instead of just...
Yeah, if you're comparing two items that are equal in item level, maybe, but realistically, it's just item level. That's the only thing people look at.
Oh, the color.
And when it comes to inviting you to a group or everything else, yeah, guess what? They're not going to be like, oh, we didn't invite you because you didn't have enough verse. No, they're just going to look at your item level. So even if you are holding out for better stats and holding certain gear in certain slots for better stats and sacrificing item level to do it, you're actually hurting yourself with the way the game is played today.
Is different, and also epic just adds more stats on top of it all. And because the game doesn't just flood you with blue items as you level up or epic items as you get max level, just feels so much better. And once you do get these items, all of them have sockets, and we're going to talk about the prismatic sockets, which are used for gems with stats. These are essentially the sources of your crit, your haste.
This is where stats matter only. Socketing, that's it. It's just the stats on gear.
Your mastery, your versatility, and you get those gems and you put them into your gear, essentially the gems that you want with the stats that you want, which is basically reforging. Reforging is not something that's new or revolutionary. It's been in the game since Cataclysm, weirdly enough, with the Cataclysm release, there's a lot of parallels going into the WoW Remix and Cataclysm. Is it a coincidence that Cataclysm, being one of the least popular classic expansions, has been released just before the Mists of Pandaria Remix, which is kind of classic on steroids, just a couple of weeks distance? I don't think so. But I digress. Reforging has been something that players have loved ever since it was introduced. It's been something that players have been asking for ever since they've replaced it with Warforged, Titanforged, and whatever other RNG proc on items we've had in the past, where now we just have item level and upgrades levels.
That's good so
Reforging has been something that just made gearing way better. It's something that makes gearing fun in a lot of other ARPGs, which is the crossover that we're gonna be doing, since WoW is not hiding away from the fact that it is actually taking good things from ARPGs.
Oh yeah, it's taking a lot from good ARPGs, and it's taking a lot from other MMOs. I mean, freaking Dynamic Flight or Skyriding, as they're calling it. I mean, it's from Guild Wars too. There's a lot of things they're taking from other things, and that's where Blizzard shines, right? That's where they're the best. Not when they're thinking of the system themselves, but when they take whatever's good from another system and implement it into their game with their own Blizzard twist on it, right? I mean, freaking World of Warcraft as a whole, they didn't design the MMO genre. They just took it from freaking EverQuest and shit and just made it better, more accessible to the crowds, to the masses, and that's why it became so popular. So I don't mind them taking shit. In fact, I want them to take shit from other games. That's good. That's the best way. That's when WoW is at its best.
Which is why I'm also using the comparison, particularly from last Epoch,
Follower
but not only
too,
the gems with ability powers is also something that Path of Exile has been doing for what, 10 years or maybe more. Not a Path of Exile player, but I did play a little bit with the gems, so that's exactly what's happening right now with WoW Remix. And being able to choose what stats you have is not only good in of itself, but you can also upgrade those gems as you level up and acquire more gems and you combine them. This essentially can be translated into actual retail WoW by you clearing harder and harder content, getting better access to secondary stats. That's essentially expressed in higher item level in the current game, which is a more boring way than simply just putting a gem into the gear. So you have two different styles of getting a better item. Either you just loot the same item with a bigger number on it and yay, that's modern WoW, or you actually have a gem that you interact with. You put in your bags, you take from your bags, you put in your items, and you swap them around, you take them out, you put them back in, change stats at your leisure. It's easy to see which one of these two game systems is way more interactive and way more fun. On top of being more fun and still preserving the need to play.
Currently, you can't take the gem out without breaking it, which kind of sucks. But yeah, I mean, I like where he's going with this system.
The game to get more power. It also alleviates a big barrier of frustration of players constantly looting either the bad items with the wrong stats, getting bad RNG, having to reload the item, having to loot it at hero track, and then having to reload it.
What do you mean you can? What do you mean you can? When I resocket something, it breaks the gem. Gems don't break? In what? Remix or retail? When you break it down, it gives you the gem back. Yeah, well, you break it down. Remove it first? Well, Remix. Yeah, I'm not talking about Remix, though. I know in Remix, yes, but I'm talking about in retail. Yes, Remix, of course. I know. They give you the tool to fucking remove the shit. Yes, but I'm talking about retail WoW. When I resocket something, the gem disappears.
That myth track.
Yeah, you're right. And they should take what they did in Miss. That's the right way to do it. Make the gem be able to be scooped out and reused.
Now, and then just upgrade it once again when you can just have
phrase
the
it better.
one
I know, my bad.
item and then choose which stats it gets. And even if you play a specific spec that maybe now just wants a little bit more versatility than crit, you can just swap out that crit and put versatility in instead of having to redo that dungeon 10 times or loot that boss 3 more weeks to hopefully get that item again or get a different version of the item that has versatility on it. And since being 100% predictable and controllable could end up being a little bit bland or boring, Remix and WoW 2.0 as an extension still retains its RNG level, but way diminished and still yet interesting enough where you can just play around with the gear because you loot a green item or even a blue item that doesn't
Jesus Christ, this sucks though. What the hell? He's got like 30 of the same thing in his bag. He's got this Ghost of the Fox vest like 10 times over.
Way diminished and still
with different socket combinations.
Interesting enough where you can just play.
Oh yeah, look, this one only has one. Jeez, but I wouldn't want a fucking system that makes me keep shit in my bag like this.
Play around with the gear because you loot a green item or even a blue item that doesn't have the right secondary stat that can add on top of the gems. You can loot a blue item that has leech or a blue item that has haste. you might want the haste a little bit more, but if you do get the leech one, you can still invest all of your strong gems into it until you loot the haste, and you take the gems away,
take them out,
put them into this haste one, and the item that you had with leech, you scrap it into bronze, the currency that you use to either get more gems, upgrade your gems, or upgrade your item. Once again, it's a full-on circle with 4 times fewer currencies and 7 times fewer item types.
Yeah, see, this is good. The scrapping is really good, though, because he can take all those extra ones that he had that he didn't really use anymore because the socket combination wasn't right and scrap them.
And 7 times fewer useless item types. And those are the prismatic gems that go into the prismatic sockets. We also have the Tinker sockets. Tinker sockets and Tinker gems by extensions are essentially procs of damage. They're overpowered on Remix because they have to be, that's the whole gimmick. They don't have to be in WoW 2.0. You can think of them as corruption powers. You can think of them as Azurites, as legendaries in Shadowlands, as...
I was gonna say, they kind of did this, though, with Azurite armor. Didn't they? I mean, we had our procs, we had our special abilities in Azurite armor, and it kind of made looting armor shitty. Like when you looted armor that didn't have the right sockets or the right powers that you could attach to it. It was, I didn't really like it. I'll be honest. I mean, call me a simpleton. I like gear to be kind of simple. I want to look at the item level and be like, yeah, this is a cracked, like when I loot something, I want that moment to be exciting. I don't want it to be where I loot it and I'm looking at it, figuring it out, understanding the sockets and the I just want to be like, damn. That's a cocked ass fucking item right there. I'm going to equip it right now. It's going to be great. I love it. Big dick item. That's what it should be. I think when you add too many systems and everything, it just bloats the shit out of it. I wouldn't want WoW 2 to feel bloated. I, in fact, want WoW 2 to feel very simple. Like when you were running through Classic and you looted that blue item in Westfall, you didn't give a shit what it had on it. You were just like, damn, I'm replacing my green item with this blue item. It's great. That's the best feeling. That's how it should be different. Don't you end up with the same sockets in the end? You can't just stack them? Sure. I guess in the end you're going to get everything, but I just want the moment of looting to be great. It has to be great. And the system should be simple enough that people can come into the game and understand it and not have to fucking open up a, what's it called, a guide on top of a guide on top of a guide to understand what the hell's going on. What do you mean I love going to third-party websites and simming my character? Yeah.
Trinkets that we have now that can end up doing a lot of damage. The type of damage that they do and the procs that they give can be adjusted, of course, and remade into actual WoW so they don't feel degenerate, where you don't take healers in your group because you just have 1 or 2 Tinker gems that just heal the entire party or raid enough to not need actual healers, but you can still have a lot of cool procs that essentially can only be found right now in Modern WoW in trinkets and maybe like legendary weapons. The cool part about Remix and what it can be adapted into WoW 2.0 is that you have more options of this, and similar to stat gems, you can just add and subtract them into your gear as you see fit. You can think of them as an extension to the actual class talents, although not really, because we will get to that in a minute, but you can think of them as just swapping in trinkets in or out. But instead of having only 2 trinkets that
He talks about player choice though, but at the end of the day, everyone's just gonna go onto the fucking go online and then look up the best slot, Tinker trinkets and put them. They're already doing it in Remix. Everyone already does it in Remix. So does it create more player choice, or does it just create more player research? And, like that's what I'm saying, like overcomplicated the gear. I don't understand what the benefit of it is.
You can play with, which is fun in of itself. You can just have more now. What is it, 10 powers, 10 Tinker gems that we have? We don't have to have 10 fully things, because I know people will take a lot of what I say very literally. It doesn't have to be literally. It's just the essence and the concept of it. You can essentially just have double or triple the amount of trinkets without actually having double or triple the amounts of trinkets, by just having these particular gems be used in different pieces of gear. On top of it, just giving you more customizable options, it just adds more powers and more fun into the game, which is a modern way of playing an RPG, especially one like...
but that's what hero talents are doing too. They're adding more options and more fun into the game. But like I said, people are just going to look up what the best is and then use that. So I don't know if it's really creating more options.
World of Warcraft that is very, very similar to action RPGs in the way that it's doing its combat and in the way that people actually enjoy playing its combat, which is a second reason as to why I'm constantly comparing WoW to ARPGs, because the combat is fast, the loot gain is high, the feedback that you get from gameplay is immense, and you can criticize World of Warcraft as much as you like. Maybe you like to play Classic, maybe you like to play Final Fantasy, but one truth remains is that World of Warcraft combat is the best combat that probably
100
any RPG has to this day.
Yes, 100. Yeah, this is WoW's #1 calling card. Combat is the best by far in WoW. It has been forever. Probably will. I haven't seen anyone come close. All these fancy schmancy Ashes of Creation, all this shit. Their combat looks janky. It does. It looks janky. I can't figure. I can't even figure out why. Sometimes it's just a eerie feeling like something doesn't feel right when you're watching it. But then you watch WoW combat and it looks like the most fluid. Everything hits right. Everything feels right. It's perfect. It's perfect. And that's why it's the best. It could be better. It could be. But everybody else could be way better. WoW just, they've never ruined combat, I feel like. Like, you say what you want about specs and balance and all that shit, but the way combat feels at its core, like the way you hit something and it feels good, that's always been really good in WoW. It's always been very good.
Come, let us lay waste to this realm.
Albass, thank you for the sub on YouTube. And isn't there always going to be cookie cutter builds? Yes, I'm not saying cookie cutter builds are bad. I'm just saying when you add extra systems, you're not really adding more player choice. You're just adding more shit they got to look up for the cookie cutter build. That's it.
Maybe even definitely better than any other MMOs out there. It's polished, it's responsive, has cool animations, feels good to press your buttons, and that is something that WoW has still done well, even through its dark days of the Shadowlands.
True.
Despite all of its very warranted criticism. And talking about gems being an extension of the talents, the utility gems, which is actually only one that you can have in WoW Remix, has shown a lot of things. First of all, you can socket this into your boots and gain access to an actual existing ability that other classes have.
The utility gem is cool. That one's cool to give you like an extra random ability that's not really combat related, but maybe like a movement ability or something. That's pretty cool.
In terms of mostly mobility, but also utility. I'm talking about the fact that my Frost Mage has Leap, and I've been playing with Leap for a good amount of time, and I'm also now playing with Soul Shape, but I can also play with another.
See, one like that could really give you some player choice. Now, are there going to be always a best in slot version of it? Yes, but it's not going to affect you so much that you have to pick the one that people are saying to pick. So this one's cool.
I can play with the Monk's Roll, and so on and so forth. Obviously, this shouldn't make it into WoW 2.0 because it's silly, it takes away from class identity, but what this actually shows is that classes like Death Knight, who are very slow, can also play with Leap.
Yeah,
they don't have to play with Leap, however, they don't have to...
It'd be pretty cool to play Death Knight with Leap, I'm not going to lie. And Egg and Friend, you're right, it kind of what you're hitting on there, classes need more action dodge. That socket creates more action dodge for every single class, right? It creates some type of movement ability. I even freaking like double jump, right? When they gave us double jump in the Plunderstorm event, man, I got used to it. It was kind of hard to go back to not having it. But yeah, this ability, it's cool to have this socket that you can basically, gives you some different mobility abilities.
To spend talent points
like
to get mobility,
kind of, yeah.
Which is something that has hindered class reworks and class designs going into War Within, and have been an issue so far in Shadowlands and also in past expansions, because people have had to choose what utility to get, or worse, in Dragonflight you have to choose between utility and actual damage or healing, which is not a choice that people love to make. One example of this that still remains is Enhancement Shaman, and it's Feral Lunge talent that's still in the spec talent tree, and you don't want to ever pick that talent because you don't have enough damage points to spare to get that particular talent. And externalizing that, breaking it apart from the talent, is the future of WoW 2.0, where now the talents can just be damage or defensives or whatever you want them to be, and then take away the utility at your discretion, because it can be any abilities, you will have full control of it, and you can just put it into gear as a socket. And then as a mage, I can choose if I want to have Blink, or if I want to have Soul Shape, or if I want to have Shimmer or things like that, and instead just delegate talents to pure class power, and then you can take away a...
This obviously takes on a whole nother meaning when it comes to PvP. You know, mobility in PvP and movement is extremely important, so that even becomes, you know, a greater point when it comes to that side of the game. But in PvE, it really becomes a style or, you know, enjoyability or whatever you like kind of choice, right? It does actually give you a choice, because it's not player power connected.
A barrier of design in terms of making talents work and giving all classes feel good options in the talents, and not have to like, oh, I really, really want that mobility, but I will lose on damage, so I will take my damage and feel bad about not having Feral Lunge as an enhancement shaman. And this concept can be extended to more than just utility abilities, particularly taking the class design into the future, which is the whole theme of this WoW 2.0 video, and making this talent design way more free in terms of the creative prospects of what classes can do. And since for a long time the devs have had this mentality into their talent design, which I fully support, of giving a player the option to either make their specs simple and maybe not do just as much damage, or adapt more buttons and interactions into their combat, but at the risk of making it more complicated, which is something that we've seen with the demonology rework, where you can just get the passive Felguard talent in your tree and not have to worry about multiple buttons.
More complicated is what I'm afraid of with hero talents. It honestly is, because I just feel like it's just added shit that they didn't have to do and extra balancing. I like that they're trying to make classes more exciting, right? Give us some stuff that we've often asked for. We'll have to see how it plays out, like Riders of the Apocalypse and shit like that for Death Knights. It's cool. But was it necessary to add all this extra shit? I don't know. We'll have to see.
And interactions between demons. This is something that's still present in WoW Remix.
Hero talents are 99%
still be
passive.
Something that
right, which means 99% you go on ahead and you look up what the best combination is and you just click the slots and fill it in.
Adapted into the gems mechanic that WoW 2.0 can have.
So how much did that add to the game?
This is the Freedom Gem, which gives you a passive ability to dispel roots from other people with a 45-second cooldown. What does this mean? Well, this means that, let's say you are a red paladin, or you are playing with a red paladin, and that red paladin is a beginner. That red paladin doesn't have the mechanical dexterity to actually press freedom in a dungeon whenever a party member gets rooted, or even in a raid, because they are just starting playing the spec. They still need to wrap their heads around the rotation. You can instead have an option to pick this Freedom Gem to have that happen passively every 45 seconds. Thus, providing your group with the utility of a root dispel and not have to actually press it and worry about it. But on a 45-second cooldown, as opposed to the 25-second cooldown that the current Freedom has, but it requires an actual player input, hence rewarding the skill of actually using an extra button to interact with the combat.
Yeah, sometimes extra buttons is not good. I mean, Monarch, if what you're saying, if anything, they simplify things, automating a few things and abilities, that's good. I mean, honestly, I'm so against the ability bloat and shit that I'll actually sometimes prefer one trinket over another because it's not a clickable button. And I don't want another clickable button. I'm like, double trinkets that I have to click starts to become too much. I'll take one, but both of them being clickable abilities sometimes pisses me off. It becomes too much, and I gotta add another keybind. Now I'm like clicking Alt-Shift-4 and then like using my left nut to hold the Enter key down while I'm pressing number 1 to do this 15th ability. It's too much. It's too much. I'll take more passive abilities, whatever. It's fine. But don't give me too many clickable abilities. It becomes way too much, and it's just stupid at that point.
Again, something very simple that gems can do, which is something that's also evident in the class talents. And we cannot talk about the future of World of Warcraft without talking about the future of Marcellian Online, which is part of why the sponsor of today's video is the Patreon platform that we have and our patrons together. Making these types of videos,
this is a you made it moment. When you sponsor yourself, you've made it. That's it.
Wouldn't be possible with just relying purely on YouTube as a source of income. So Patreons definitely help in making us able to do videos like this and more in the future. And if you decide to become a part of the team, our Patreon platform with the link down below, patreon.com/MarcellianOnline, does also have a lot of thank you rewards for all of our patrons that are supporting our content. Thank you. So let's talk about why WoW 2.0 will also be more accessible to new players, and Remix has shown this with the leveling process. This is also something that is very akin to Classic WoW and part of the appeal of Classic WoW and why people love that, and that is leveling is impactful and it's actually worth it because of a few simple things. We've talked already about the gear that you loot, because if you loot an item at level 15, you can use it at level 70 in a max level raid if you just constantly upgrade it. There's no longer that barrier that the item cannot.
The one thing that's really bad about that system, if you put it in retail, is if all of a sudden certain items become really good from like really old content, so people got to go back, you're like, oh man, you suck, you don't have the ring from Sholo Mace, what are you doing here, you fucking noob? So then going back and like farming that, is that real content? Like going back on your single character who can one-shot the entire dungeon and doing it 36 times until the ring drop, is that content? No, I don't know. So that there's that issue. That's why I feel like Blizzard doesn't put this in the game, is because everybody knows biz items are going to suddenly become items that you could have gotten back when you were level 2. You know, like going back to fucking Northshire, doing that intro quest so you can get that ring that you can upgrade all the way to level 70. It's hyper complicated at that point. So I don't know if they'll ever do that. The pause phase. Yeah, it's Pog one. I got
reach
it
a
right.
specific item level because its item bracket of Explorer or whatever we have right now in live is restricting
Yeah,
you
it
from
wouldn't
getting
work.
it.
I don't think this would
and
work
it
in
feels
retail
like if
either.
you do level, whatever you do contributes to endgame, and it takes away from that rush of I need to reach max level or I cannot play World of Warcraft or play with my friends. That is also very evident in the way that the content is being released for the player leveling in WoW Remix, because you can actually do raids as you level up. Mogushan Vaults, for instance, is unlocked at level 25, and then each other level subsequently unlocks at the higher level you go. And that is the normal version of the raid. With the scaling technology that WoW has...
I mean, you could have the gear be relevant all the way through cap level. Like, you could do that. But once you hit cap level, you would have to make that first raid, the gear on that automatically trump whatever the fuck you upgraded from level 2. Like, you cannot have that ring from level 2 be better than what's dropping in the current raid. It would really scuff up the biz tracking down of things and all that.
That would need some tuning, of course, once this is adapted to actual retail. You can actually play with your max level friends without having to be max level as a player. This is, of course, good for new players, good for players who are looking to get in.
There's some MMOs that do this
and for
already, right?
casual overall players of World of Warcraft, whether it is dungeon grinders or raiders that don't care about getting that cutting edge achievement. That just opens up the gates for everybody to play all of the content. It doesn't have to be about just getting to max level and nothing until max level matters, because you'll replace everything that your character has at max level and bringing back the feel of...
Yeah, for LFR, I could see it working. You guys are right. Yeah, for just LFR, I could see that happening as a system.
Classic WoW, where you could just enjoy the whole journey instead of just getting the end game part. And for players that are actually hardcore in WoW.
Because LFR, nobody's judging your gear. No one gives a shit about what you have. You're not even picking the people in it. The system's just filling out the raids, so it doesn't matter.
Remix, you still have heroic raids, which could be the equivalent of mythic raids right now, where you can only do them at max level, and they reward higher quality gear, higher quality currency in terms of bronze, and more achievements and mounts and things like that. You will still be able to do heroic raids even as a casual player, but you don't feel like you have to rush towards them, or you're not part of the actual community that plays World of Warcraft. And since I kept mentioning the currency as well, I am definitely not a fan of the amount of currency that we've been having in WoW for the past couple of expansions. Completely replaced every other patch with either new versions of the same currencies that we have right now, or completely new currencies, constantly filling a list of 10,000 types of coins and crests and aspects and badges and all of that stuff. Having only one universal currency, which could normally be gold in a game like this, but WoW Remix just does it better with bronze, just gives everybody full freedom of what they want to do in the game and how much they want to do of the said thing.
It's tougher in retail, though, to do this, because the amount of bronze people can get from random shit and how quickly they could easily make like current content irrelevant would be bad. Like, you could basically have high-end guilds and all kinds of players farming bronze like insane people, right? I mean, we see it right now in Remix, where every time there's like a hyperspawn found, they go and they just delete it from the game because people are using it so much. You would have people building up so much bronze that the second a new season comes out, they could upgrade their gear all the way to the highest level like day one. And then they're just sitting around playing with their dick, complaining there's no content. So that's a problem. So I don't know if they would ever do this, but in terms of like currency bloat being eliminated, yeah, it's got to happen. But you really can't have currencies capable of upgrading gear be able to be looted from everything. That would create problems, for sure.
Because if you like to do
Remix,
dungeons, you can just do dungeons, get bronze, and still get gear upgrades and all of the cosmetics. If you want to do raids or scenarios in WoW Remix, you can do that. Or if you just want to farm quests and reputations with open world factions, you can also do that and still acquire bronze to get all of the rewards that you want, instead of what we have right now on live with different types of currencies that drop from different types of content that reward different types of gear that sometimes are not even upgradable with the currency that they also give in the same content. That way, if I...
Yeah, I know, Monarch. That's why they create a new currency every time. I just wish they created currencies that were more either made more sense or just have put a season on it. You know, like this is your upgrade gems from season 2. They can't be used in season 3. Like you don't have to create a new name, new shit, all this new crap every time. Didn't they do that with Valor? Wasn't Valor like you had Valor the entire expansion, but like season 1 Valor can it be used in season 2 or something? Maybe I'm remembering it wrong. Honestly, but like you could have easily had the Valor system just continue on through fucking Dragonflight. Like you could have just been getting Valor badges and shit from that. But it was turned into gold. I know, but they could have just used that system. I just don't like the 50 different names of shit and having to understand what the relearn shit every time. Just give me my fucking heroic points and mythic points or whatever, and I use that to upgrade. I don't need all this other shit.
If I am a mythic creator and I get an item from the heroic version of a raid, I don't have to go do
They got turned
dungeons
into gold at
to
the end
get
of
the
every season. Yeah, so why don't they just freaking keep doing that? I'm too old for this
necessary
shit.
currency to upgrade that
Me
to the
too,
mythic
Phil.
level that I need for my mythic raiding, or have to redo the mythic raid every week to hopefully replace that item with the same item at a higher item level so that I can finally use the currency that I am looting from the mythic raid to upgrade that item and not have to be forced to do dungeons at a lower level or at a higher level than what I am actually aiming to accomplish. And if I am a raider or a dungeon pusher or a key doer or whatever I'm doing and I've reached the level that I want to push at and I don't need any more gear, I can just use that currency to buy transmogs or buy mounts instead of accumulating flight stones and crests at the end of the season to unreasonable amounts that just become useless and they just get deleted next season anyway, which feels bad even though I enjoy doing dungeons and raids and not getting anything else from them. Now, of course, WoW Remix is not fully WoW 2.0 because we still have the old Mists of Pandaria content. The raids are the old raids, the dungeons are the old dungeons, the scenarios are the old scenarios. The only thing that changes is that you are now literally a god in terms of how much damage you're doing and how fast you're clearing content.
Unless you became a god via the frog farm and now you've been nerfed, then you're not. But maybe you still are if you bought all the fucking gear and shit. I don't think they retroactively took that stuff away.
System changes has made the journey way more enjoyable and accessible to all sorts of players regardless of who they are, what they're doing. Funnily enough, the raids being 10-man also makes them a lot more accessible for everybody else as well. And considering how many parallels there are between WoW Remix and the Season 4 of Diablo 4 that has actually revitalized, resuscitated the game, and also last epoch in terms of customizing your character and how deep it can go, it's very obvious that WoW devs are listening and they're paying attention to what people find fun. And it's no secret that they're using these types of events to kind of learn and essentially add these types of systems into the game eventually. I don't think they will be available in expansions like War Within, which are almost completed, but they could be available in Midnight, in the Last Titan, where they can completely revitalize the entirety of the WoW's engine from what's underneath the hood to what actually ends up being the entire automobile that is World of Warcraft, and that is the future of WoW and WoW 2.0 is going to be. And we talked about the graphics part as well, and considering the journey that WoW has had in its graphics, what it could get in WoW 2.0 is incredible, and you can check our video on the evolution of WoW's graphics right here on our channel and take a trip down memory lane and see where it came from and where it is today.
Right. I do think one thing he really didn't touch on in the video is, yeah, graphics are fine and systems are fine and everything, but I think one thing that appeals to a lot of people when it comes to the idea of WoW 2 is that reset, that going back to the basics, that kind of starting over, you know, and people say, oh, but I want my mounts and I want everything else. I feel like you could keep that stuff, right? You can keep things through transmog, you can keep things through the mounting system and everything like that, whatever it is. But that reset where you're going back to Elwyn Forest, everyone's starting again. Things are simple. Everything kind of reset in a way where it's simplified and done right from the start. That way it doesn't become overcomplicated again. But we'll see if they ever do it. I'm not completely confident that it'll ever happen. Are we going to continue to get refreshes and better graphics, things like that? Yeah, those things are happening in Midnight and all that. We know that. But a full-on WoW 2, we can only hope and dream.